Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, and thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. The session is being recorded, and right now everybody is in listen-only mode. But if you have any questions, please type them into the questions pane, and we'll address them at the end of the session. Okay, let's go on. Joining me today are Frank Jones and Sandy Johnson of Legal Software Connection, Charlotte Quiroz, Bill Baker, and Van Swearingen of Baker Cadence Solutions, Peter Brannigan of DoxAdvisors, Rick Bernauer of Cytek, and John Heckman of Heckman Consulting. During today's session, we are going to cover miscellaneous topics based on questions we've received from you. We often hear, is it possible to do, where can I find, who do I call? And the goal today is to point you in the right direction. And as mentioned, if you have any questions during today's webinar, please add them to the questions pane and we'll try and provide an answer at the end. If for some reason we cannot get to all the questions today, we'll reply to you after the webinar. A few questions we are going to cover today are, people ask us for troubleshooting advice, and we've also heard, why are you doing this anyway? And we've had Worldox for a long time. Should I archive? Should I clean out old user accounts? And many other topics. And so we are going to get started with, let me get to the next slide. And this is about troubleshooting. And I think John Heckman was going to start with this, but everybody else can join in.
Well, there's two kinds of questions. One is, as Hella said, how do I do X? And the other is specific issues. And the more information you gather about a specific issue, the better off you are. It's like people don't bring their car into the garage and say, my car is broken, can you fix it? But I get calls all the time of people that say, Worldox is broken, can you fix it? So the first thing is try logging out of your computer and logging back in. It's sort of the basic step. You'd be surprised how many times it fixes a given problem, even if sometimes people get tired of being told to reboot. The second question to ask is, are you the only one with the issue, or is everybody having it? If everybody's having it, the chances are it's a Worldox issue. If you're the only one having it, chances are it's an issue with your PC. Worldox piggybacks off of Windows. So any problem with Windows is going to affect Worldox. Worldox is sort of the canary in the coal mine as far as Windows is concerned. If you're the only one that's having an issue, chances are it's not Worldox per se, but something with your Windows. The third thing to do is to capture or write down any error messages. Lots of times, specific error messages are linked to specific problems, and it will save you a lot of trouble and moving forward. It'll be a lot faster to diagnose. The next question is, what were you doing when the issue occurred? And does it happen every time, or is it sporadic? So depending on what you were doing, that also narrows down the possible issues. So taken together, that's going to cut down your troubleshooting time substantially, or chances are it will, and you'll be able to get back to work quickly. One thing here I didn't mention is various workarounds. For example, if there's a problem with the indexer and you can't find documents, you might go to direct access or use the favorite matters on the left-hand side, both of which bypass the indexer and might let you continue working, even if not quite as efficiently as before. Similarly, I just saw recently an issue, somebody's machine was slowing down dramatically every half hour or so. It turns out that it was an antivirus setting. So that kind of thing lets you resolve issues as quickly as possible. Okay, Helen, next. Okay, that's it for that. The second question I get a lot is, how do I customize the columns in Worldox? The default display that comes is not really very useful, and you want to set it up so that it conforms to the way you work. And this might be what you want to do, basically, is get a firm-wide setting as a default, and then if people want to customize their own, they can do that. It's pretty easy. The first thing you want to do is any place where there's a blank area in the column display, that little gray piece at the top in the image there. If you right-click and select Insert Columns and the columns you want to display, you can then drag and drop them to the order and the size that you want. Once you get the display you want, right-click again on the column display and select Save Column to Template and give it a meaningful name. That will ensure that the display that you've picked is saved. I have people that call me up and say, I keep redoing the display and it never sticks. You have to save it as a given display. The next thing you can do, which is really useful, it's the next slide, Ella. Next slide. You can also tie a display to a specific bookmark. For example, you could tie it to searching for emails that displays the email information, whereas searching for regular documents does not. If you go to save the column display again, at the top you'll see, if you've done the search on a bookmark, at the top you'll see associate with this type of list, and it'll be the name of the bookmark. So you click that, and then every time you do a search on that bookmark, it'll bring up the display you want. As I said, you can have different displays for emails, for regular documents. If you import a lot of documents, you can have the display that lets you sort the documents the way they appeared on the USB drive or whatever you got. So frequently, people might want to have 2 or 3 or 4 different displays, depending on what they're doing. Okay, that's it for that point.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on these topics on the columns displays?
One thing too to remember is the customize, save my favorite view, save as my favorite view, because again, if you change something like turn the navigation panel on or turn the viewer on and it keeps going off, you know that you just have to go back and save it on by clicking on the customize button, make this my favorite view.
Right, that's a good point.
And that saves a few attributes. That will save the status of the viewer panel and the status of the navigation panel, status of whether comments are displayed within your list and or not. It doesn't save all of the settings permanently, but it will save many of them.
Good point.
Yep. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is
that's me, I'm up. So at Big Cadence, after the firm has said, yes, this is a good product for us, we want to go to document management, and then it's installed and configured and ready to roll out to the users, when the Baker Cadence trainer, and me specifically, I can't speak for anyone else, oftentimes I might hear from the end user who wasn't involved in the original process, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And so even though, you know, I wasn't involved in the decision making either, I am the person representing not only Worldox, but also Baker Cadence. And so they're looking to me for an answer. And basically, the answer is because whatever you were doing prior to using document management, you've grown out of that system. It doesn't work for you very well anymore. The firm has either grown or changed in such a way that it makes it more difficult. So why document management? Document management, and Worldox specifically, solves the problem of a messy folder structure. It solves the problem of being able to quickly and easily save documents and quickly and easily retrieve those documents. And finally, why Worldox? Why not some other document management? I find the Worldox interface easy to navigate. It's customizable, as John just showed us. It's pretty intuitive. You know, once you get a tour of where things are, it's pretty easy to find things. And finally, document security. So sometimes we have these issues where we need an ethical wall around an entire client or matter, or we just need to protect a particular document. Very, very easy to do with Worldox. And honestly, I've been with Baker Cadence 15 years, and I personally do not know of one person who started using Worldox that ever said, I want to go back to our old folder structure. So maybe they're out there, I just haven't heard of them. So I find Worldox easy to navigate, easy to use, easy to save, easy to retrieve, and easy to customize. That's it.
I think another point
Okay.
is that Worldox gives you a single electronic repository, if it's set up properly, of all your documents, emails, scans, imported document, absolutely everything that's related to a given matter, which gives the firm a major step up both in finding information and in dealing with issues like legal hold or document production or anything else. It gives you a single electronic repository of every single document and email related to a given matter.
Right. And I don't know, I think, Frank, you had talked about some things on why, you know, why Worldox would be is a good choice.
I don't remember that context, but to kind of tag into what John said, we see Worldox as the official matter file. It shouldn't be paper. It should be the electronic official matter file. Worldox is so important for so many reasons. A lot of partners and firms come to us and say, we need to change the culture from my data to our data, that this needs to be shareable by all for the benefit of the firm, for the future employees that come to work at the firm, the attorneys that follow. You're creating a structure that's official, easy to follow.
If I could jump in on that, I totally agree with what Frank was saying there. One of the analogies I use often with people or new attorneys who are joining a firm and they're saying, why do we do this? I can find my documents. It's because it's my documents. It's just like I know where all those stacks of paper are in my office. I know where I've put things. I can find them in 10 seconds on anything, but no one else in my office knows where I've piled that behind my desk or put it over someplace else. So what we're trying to do is to make it a firm-wide document system. And there is a little bit of a, pain with that to be able to put things in there, but the gain is so substantial for the firm as a whole. That's the reason why people do it. It's for the good of the firm and going forward.
I'll add a point too, Helen, that it's fun to watch the transformation of users. when they first come into the first training, it's as Charlotte described, people are questioning why they have to take the time to learn this new system. And then as we start to roll out what the capabilities are of Worldox, and they start to see how fast they can find documents and get answers, they start to not question anymore. Now they want to learn more.
Right.
And then, you know, when we come back and do our second training in the second week, they're anxious to learn more about it instead of fighting it. They've made the transformation. And I can't tell you how many firms call us and say, we just hired a person who came from a firm that had this product called Worldox, but we don't know what that is. Can we get a demonstration? It's because that person has said, you must take a look at this and see the differences between what we're doing here and what I had at the other firm. And so that's the transformation process that's kind of fun to watch. And once you're addicted to Worldox, you never want to go back to Windows folders.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it also, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a twist on that first question. Why are we doing this? I was just reminded of a question I was asked in a meeting. It was quite a large law firm, very influential in New York City. They do most of the big land, the skyscrapers. So I had a special training session for just the main partner and a few of his senior staff, a VIP session. And he said to his team, why didn't we do this 15 years ago? He basically said, we're idiots. When he saw it within 5 minutes, he immediately said, how come we never saw this before? And why didn't we know about this? And literally, why did we not do this 15 years ago? So it's not, why are we doing this? It's why have you not done it for so long? If any law firm is out there, if you're a law firm and you don't have a document management system, it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the thing that everybody should deploy. It's such a no-brainer that we're all fascinated about how long it takes people to realize that and to realize the savings, the security, the risk reduction, and all the other things. So why didn't we do this for so long? That's the question a lot of people probably should be asking.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't realize how much time and you can save by actually everyone knowing where everything is. That's great. Let's see, we will go on to the next point. And this is a question, I think, Sandy, do you had put this one up for us?
I did. I get this question quite a few times a month, and people will say, hey, I went to choose a client when I'm saving my document and my client table, it's all gone. There's just nothing there. So one of the first things, and trust me, the first time this happened, it took me a little while to figure it out. But now one of the first things I look at is what button is selected up there on the button bar. Because if inactive only is selected and you have no inactive clients, you're going to have an empty list. So one of the first things to look at is just to see what button is selected. If it does say show all or active only, then we do have a different issue. But often, I would say 95% of the time, it has to do with that button. And then another display issue or thought is, where have my bookmarks gone? So, and a site that is upgrading from GX3 to GX4, because the bookmarks are off by default, one of the first things I get asked is, where are my bookmarks? They're not there. So if you go to display up on the menu bar, display, show hide, and it's a toggle. If pin bookmarks, if it doesn't have a check beside it, it's not displayed. So anything you see in that drop down with a check mark is actually already displayed. So you just want to click on pin bookmarks, and then your bookmarks, whatever you have pinned, will display again. And I think I have another slide in there, unless someone wants to comment on that.
Okay, This one was the next one.
This one too is okay. A lot of people get used to using the drop down, the down arrow. And what that is, though, is a history list. So it's a history of what you've used. It is never everything. So I do get that question sometimes where, okay, again, where are my clients? Right now I have Bugs Bunny and Barney Rubble. Where are the rest of the clients? So you always want to either browse the table or click on the word client, and that'll pull up the whole table. And there's a keyboard shortcut, Alt F2, I think. Not great on
Yeah,
keyboard.
F2. F2 all by itself, one of my favorites.
F2 by itself, thank you. Okay. And I think I have one more.
All right, I will get onto that one. Yep.
Thanks. Okay. And another question that I get is, okay, I've got a lot in my history list. So I picked a bunch of authors here, and maybe I was doing work helping somebody out, and so now I've got all these authors. I don't want them in my history list, or a client or a matter. So now what you can do is actually right-click on any entry in any history list, and over on the right there, you'll see that you'll get a minus sign. And then you just simply click outside of the drop-down. And next time you go back into that drop-down, whatever you have minused will be gone. So it's a great way to clean up a history list if you want to.
That's very handy. I didn't know that. Thank you. I'll be pointing that out.
I think it's great. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that either.
You learn something new every time you we have these sessions. Everybody finds new little tricks that they can pass on. We actually do not have any more slides right now, but if any of you have any additional things you would like to cover, any questions that you've heard over the past, week, 2 weeks, longer than that, we'd like to share in both the questions and some of the answers.
Well, I have one thing to add to Sandy's, and that is Baker Cadence does a lot of new hire training. So when Baker Cadence clients hire on a new lawyer or paralegal secretary, they will often email us and say, I've got this new person coming on, what's your schedule for training? When I'm training a new person, they don't know the client list, they don't know the numbers, they're not used to the names and how they're input into the system. I remind them that when they're saving or searching in the client field, they can type any part of that client name, or in the matter field, they can type any part of that matter name. So they don't necessarily have to go to the label that says client that's really a button that doesn't look like a button, right? They don't necessarily have to go to that whole list and hunt for it. That they can use their words. And that was new in GX4, and honestly, it's like the best thing they could have ever done because I never remember the numbers. And so I love being able to use my words, and that's one of the things I remind new users as well as seasoned users, that they can use their words.
If I could jump in on one here. The question I get sometimes is not, we get those questions of how do I do this, how do I do that. I find it more interesting when I get the philosophical questions about Worldox. The should I be archiving? I've had the Worldox for a decade and I've got these documents. Should I be doing that? And I thought it'd be good to get everybody's different thoughts on that. I've been working with a lot of firms that have been asking me that. And in some, I'm just going to throw this out for people. In some, my answer is no. You are a small firm. You only, have a few tens of thousands of documents. It's not causing problems as far as speed of indexing or rebuild or finding, and it's just easier that way. But I also have been working with firms that have 3 million some documents out there, and it starts to take longer to be able to do rebuilds in case of a problem with the indexes or just general types of searching and sorting through. And then in some corporate sites, we just want to get those documents off the system so they're no longer out there. And so we set up rules and procedures to help people with that. There is built into Worldox the archiving capability where you can send it over into and decide where you want it to be stored. I sometimes like actually setting up a different cabinet in Worldox for archiving. It has the same fields, let's say client, matter, doc type, author, but in the archive cabinet, we add on an additional field for destruction date that's different. It's not in the standard cabinet, but that way they can, as they move them over, put in a date and then be able to search and say, these are all going to get destroyed in 2024 when we do our pass through that way, and we can get searching and reports to be able to find them out there. There's also a bulk archiving utility, which we use at different sites, which really makes the process easier. So you can feed in what you want to have get moved over. It helps throttle it down so it doesn't take up all your bandwidth and take somebody's time to be able to do it. So I guess my answer to that question, should I archive, is it depends. You might want to talk to somebody, get an estimate as to the impact that the documents are currently have, and then benefits you could get from it. But I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say.
One of the issues with archiving, especially for people in some variety of hosted solution, people that are running Worldox hosted are paying often substantial amounts for disk space. And I've seen firms with, as Rick said, with say 1 million or more documents, they can free up a significant amount of disk space if they archive it off of their hosted solution to another hard drive or some other location where they're not paying an arm and a leg for disk space.
Well, and if you use the archive tool that Rick mentioned, you can actually archive, and then there's a feature within that to purge from the archive.
Right.
Yeah. Well, another question that we get, which I guess is kind of not really related, but sort of, you have all your old files. What about your old user accounts? Do you clean them out too? I don't know if anybody has a comment on that one.
Well, no, and I was just going to go ahead, John.
Most places I just make them inactive. Cleaning them out would actually be a lot of work. And if you make them inactive, then they're not going to pop up, but it's still available if you need it.
Right, and this way all of the documents can still be searched by that author or user, so you don't want to delete them. Typically, like John said, we will deactivate users who are no longer in the system, and what that means is that account can no longer save new documents, but everything that exists is maintained and can be searched and located. So we just deactivate.
Yeah, the rule that we were taught, Van and John, is that in the IT world, is that you never delete a user out of Active Directory because you'll never get it back, even if you put the name back in. So you never delete a user. And thus in Worldox, you should follow that same tactic and simply make them inactive. Hella, we got a few questions this morning from customers that couldn't attend, but they wanted to hear it in a playback in another webinar. And of the handful we got, I thought a few were pertinent because others I think should comment on this. Would you mind if I shared one or more of those questions with the group?
We'll be happy to hear them, and hopefully we can come up with some good answers for your clients.
The first one was, what would you say is the most underused Worldox feature? And I haven't. Okay, go ahead.
Personal categories.
Why?
Okay.
Why? You just don't think people use them or know of them, or?
I think they don't know about them.
Yeah, so categories were introduced in GX3, but they were a little cumbersome to use. There were multiple steps. And so my experience is that firms just stopped using them. And so they didn't even have the column on their column layout. And then when they upgrade to GX4, one of the things I know that that Mike Crouch and Van do when they do these upgrades is they add that column back. So then when we do the upgrade training, I introduce them again. And it's like the light bulb goes on. They say, oh my gosh, I didn't know it did that. And I said, well, it's been enhanced. And so, yeah, I think it's because if they started out with GX3 and it was just like, oh man, that's 6 clicks. I don't want to do 6 clicks. Oh, forget that. But then with GX4, they're so easy to use that it like opened a whole new world for them. But you can't get to everybody, don't you know? And so there are still some people out there who, yeah, don't know about them, don't know how easy they are to use in GX4. And of course, we always train on them, but new users, you give them so much information, they sometimes forget. So that's why I give homework when I do my training. So Baker Cadence supplies a guide, and in that guide is everything we talk about in the training and a whole bunch of stuff we don't. And I assign them to look at 2 pages a day. Look at the picture and read the headline and move on. Then when you want to use a personal category, you'll remember that you saw it in the guide. So yeah, when I say personal categories, it's like people are ready to be my new BFF.
Okay, anybody else? Who else has one? Dr. Brannigan.
My favorite one that I think not enough people use is filters. Filters are life-changing. They're right there and they're so impactful. And I'm amazed at how many people, even that have been using Worldox for 5, 10 years, never, when you show them a filter, they say, well, what's that? I never saw that before. Even though it's right there on that first screen, it blows my mind, but it's by far the most productive thing. If you've got a list of more than 15 files to look at, and you've got, a matter with 100, 200, 300 files, or a search result with 100, you don't have to go back and do another search. Just click the filter and pick up the doc type, pick up the whatever. If it's a spreadsheet, is it a PowerPoint you're looking for? So that's by far the most impactful for me, for people, especially experienced users that have never seen it and are kind of blown away when you show it to them.
I have a comment on that, and I mean, I used Worldox in production in a law firm for 6 or 8 years before I knew about filters, frankly, because I was just busy. But now they're indispensable. I've been using Worldox now for about 15 years, and what I like most about filters is that the filters that I use frequently, I can then set up bookmarks to those filters, and I have push button access. I don't have to do any extra clicks or go anywhere. I just click the filter bookmark on my button bar, and I can filter to show items, or I can filter to exclude items using those bookmarks to the filters. Super useful.
Yeah, the one that came to mind to me when I read that question was workspaces, but not workspaces just as they are, where it's just a choice on your panel, but workspaces with globally defined, intelligent, one-click bookmarks. In other words, picture a list of values below each workspace. One might say filed with court or court filings. Another may say correspondence. Imagine these prefab choices of groupings of documents that if you can just click those individually within the matter, within the workspace, The system will retrieve just those files for you. Anybody else have any underused feature?
One that I see, Frank, or I think people don't know about is when you're in Outlook and you have the favorite matters list in the folder section that Worldox produces. If you right click on it, it will open up a Worldox screen in Outlook, so you can see all the documents that are in that folder that you just clicked on, and you can still stay in Outlook. So you can see Worldox from Outlook, and then if you want to go back to Outlook, just click on your inbox and it restores the Outlook view.
That's right, and you can even customize that to where it will only display the email when you choose that choice and separate that from all the other files.
Right, so you can have it so that the column bar will just show emails, email metadata, and that's very handy because that's what you want to see typically when you're coming from Outlook to the Worldox screen.
Now, the next question I got for the group was, and I'm reading this, our firm will be moving to Microsoft 365 soon. Are there features and benefits that may not be immediately obvious to us? And if so, do any of them benefit our use of Worldox? And I did have an immediate thought to that one. To me, what is underused, undervalued, is the fact that Microsoft Teams is very, very useful. Within the firm, Teams would give you the ability to chat amongst each other, eliminating so much email going back and forth, and keeping a historical chronology of that chat. So an intelligently used chat function is useful for other people that join the firm to be able to see information that's been discussed without having to go back and hunt down people's email threads. So Teams is so often used only for screen sharing, but isn't being used in more interesting ways, chat being one of them. And then secondly, all of a sudden you have within Teams the ability to share files. And those files that are being shared, which benefits Worldox because Worldox can be the catalyst to sharing those files. Those files then become shared under SharePoint, which then means they're out in the cloud and you can actually co-edit those documents, see them in real time, multiple authors working in the documents simultaneously. So I think going to 365 opens that up if only people are given that insight to want to go study that a little bit more. Any other thoughts about what they may be missing with moving to Microsoft 365 at first glance?
Well, of course, the fact that, and I know you're implying this, but don't know that you said it, that the Teams integration from Worldox is built in and free now. So you can actually create a team from a matter in Worldox. You can upload the files and securely share them right from Worldox into that team. And that integration is now at no cost. If you've got a Worldox license, now you just have to configure the teams in the cloud, but that's not that significant. And any of us can take care of that or guide your IT team how to do that. But it's built in and it's free and it's really powerful. And I agree, it's underused at the moment, but I expect it'll be used a lot more in the coming year.
I always point out, Frank, that if you do that, now you've got the ability to have a client portal using Teams as the device to share. A lot of people think you can only share within your own organization, but you can set up Teams so that you can share outside the organization as well. And client portal seems to be a very popular topic that comes up from our clients and our prospects.
Those are great answers. And my last question, but it'll be really interesting to see what you guys say about this one. Again, I'm reading this. Do you have any guesses where the law firm market may be heading in the next couple of years as it pertains to our use of technology? You guys ponder that. I had an immediate thought when I read that. And
my immediate thought is it pretty much just happened when we had the pandemic. Even though we have had the ability to work remotely for a long time, we didn't bother to put it into place and set up protocols, and the pandemic made us. So I see a lot that firms are going to continue to work that way. I was working with a client this morning, and we needed some information from another team member. And I said, well, when will you both be in the office at the same time? And she said, never, we don't do that anymore. So we got it all worked out. But the point being is that the biggest change that I think could happen in the next 10 years just happened.
I think that I have a different take on that. There are a lot of changes happening. Obviously, the ability to be able to work remotely, work from anywhere is a big part of that. But another part I think that's going to be happening is more collaboration between members of the firm, but also outside that, sharing of documents securely and making it so that that can really be a key part that people want to have. And then also artificial intelligence is going to come into the law firms much more heavily over the next few years, not only with drafting of documents, but looking at cases, evaluating them. There's going to be a lot more that people put in, track information about their cases that their firm has had, to be able to give them information about perhaps what documents should be used, what approach, things like that. I think that artificial intelligence is going to be the thing that we really start seeing coming on.
It seems to me, to kind of play on that, and I just see this, I feel this, I talk to our customers. I think that slowly but surely, we're actually heading to a Microsoft Cloud Services world. And I specifically said Microsoft. I think we're inching towards that. And first with Exchange, and all our email is in the cloud. And I see more and more customers beginning to leverage what is called Microsoft Azure. And once you're in a cloud services platform, you essentially can eliminate your own internal servers and other infrastructure. So I think you're going to see the prices come down and everything move to, it's almost back to the old days where it's mini computer mainframe world, but it's managed by Microsoft Azure. And what's super important about all that, not only will it make it more mobile and flexible, easier to share, but it will make it much more secure, because you'll then be able to leverage the Microsoft Azure Information Protection. I think that's AIP, Rick. And all of a sudden you can actually apply templates or other rules, and that on its own will go out, discover the files, determine which way they should be classified. So all of a sudden, all these firms that have customers asking them, do they meet certain criteria of security, is going to be leveraged and handled automatically by the security within Azure. So I think you're going to see this becoming very, very mainstream. Charlotte's right. We were pushed their way with the pandemic, but I think Microsoft's going to be the eventual winner of it all.
It's a really interesting thing. I agree with you that the prices will continue to come down, but it won't be a steady path. Microsoft is raising their prices early next year. It's already announced. Everything's going to become more expensive in Office 365 licensing in Azure. So it's the ideal thing. You create a semi-market control, and then you can raise your prices. But it's going to be interesting to see. But eventually, the cloud hosting prices, those will continue to come down.
They claim that they're far less expensive than Amazon, for example. I agree with you 100%, but I just have this feeling everything else they've ever tackled, they eventually own it. And those that have Worldox will be very safe in that environment, because with what we have today with Worldox and what we're coming down the road with next year with Worldox, we'll all be super players within that kind of environment.
Well, I also am
Yeah.
watching Google Cloud, because they have a very small part of the market now, but they have the resources to take a lot more of the market share. I agree that Microsoft is the growing one right now and taking away from Amazon. But Google, if they want to lower the prices, make it available to the common user, like they did with Gmail, they'll have a huge cloud audience as well.
Yes. I just think there's more than one way to thrive in the cloud, right? We hear too much about software as a service, individual things being hosted by some third-party provider in the cloud, when in fact what I'm describing, what Rick has said, what Bill is saying, you can host your entire platform. Platform as a service is similar to software as a service, but it's the whole platform. So serverless computing is real. And you can simply take what you have, upload it to one of these platform environments, and you have the best of all worlds. It is in the cloud, it's professionally managed, it's highly secure. I think that that's happening now. I think it's happening more rapidly than we realize, as led, as Charlotte said, largely by the pandemic and people beginning to look for other options.
You're right, Frank. We have more and more clients asking us. They have Worldox Professional, and they're running on in-house servers, but they've been prompted either by their IT people or just the market in general to say, should we be on a cloud? And they always think that Worldox, because they see it in writing, has an option called Worldox Cloud, but they don't understand that's a software as a service cloud offering, not a platform as a service. So what we've been doing is making sure they understand the different options. You have Worldox Cloud, and you can have hosted Worldox on a hosted cloud service like Azure or Amazon or any of the others. And a lot of them don't realize that, so I want to make sure that people who are attending understand there's many other options besides the one. They're all good, but they all have their individual benefits as well.
Right. We got a question about, come in about Worldox Web, because that's another way to, do your remote access work. But and they, it's free. The software is free, but how much should they expect to pay if they want to install it? What do they need to look out for?
But we install it in as long as they have the requirements in place. That is the technical requirements, the software and hardware. We set up in 2 hours, and that's about $350 depending on the rate. It might be different parts of the country. Might be a little higher or lower, but it's not difficult to set up. And once you set up, it's easy to operate. So yeah, it's a good offering, and it's very good for people who are working from home or people working in remote offices, and easier to set up than the Worldox Enterprise or other option.
Yes, I've been working with Worldox Web a lot recently, and I have to say that the development is it's beautiful now. It's very quick, but what you want to know is if you're using it exclusively as through the website, that you don't have all of the features. You will want to also install. There's a local agent to install, which brings more features, and then there's an email integration piece. And so there are a couple of little pieces of installation to be done. And then you have your email integration, and you have your Worldox Work Zone as you expect to with Worldox Professional, and you can use that with Worldox Web. And I'm saying that I'm really impressed with the performance of Worldox Web just recently, for sure.
I think one issue that sites need to think about as well is that if you're going to be installing Worldox Web, which is a great resource for people to be able to get to the documents, you are going to need to be setting up different servers and internet-facing servers. So you're taking on a certain security requirements and posture that might be a little bit more than what a small firm with just a single file server is used to. So there will be some additional costs. You want to get your IT people involved in looking at that. There's some good documents out there about what the requirements are as far as an IIS server and the other things that you have. It's fairly easy to get set up. You just don't want to run it if you only have one file server. You got to be careful of how you configure and give access. So there's some additional costs, perhaps with Microsoft licensing or having other virtual machines or physical servers.
I agree, Rick. I see it as measure 3 times, cut once. In other words, it's all about the preparation, understanding the requirements, getting the IT and everyone involved initially. And then Bill's right, it's only a couple of hours to install it, but you've already done all the measuring, which may be another hour or two to get the right people coordinated. And then it rolls in rather easily.
And then, of course, don't forget the training part. You know that there is a training involved. It's in some ways a little bit less intuitive, I would say, than the thick client. So there definitely is a training if you're going to use the web interface instead of the client. Obviously, if you're using the app or the iPad or the iPhone, they're pretty intuitive because they're just Apple. And it is friendly, but again, it is just a bit different. And there are techniques specific to the web interface that are unique that you wouldn't need to know if you're using the professional. But just be aware of putting in some time for training of users.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, because we do get those questions on a regular basis. I don't know, does anybody have any other things they would like to bring up for today, or?
Well, I'll just say one thing, if you don't mind, just on that topic of the web. Currently, I'm actually doing a proof of concept with a firm. We have offices in multiple countries, and we actually had a call the other day on 3 continents. But the web agent as a way to be used from another country is proving to be reasonably effective. We're about to finally figure out, is it going to be acceptable for 8 hours a day use? But so far, the proof of concept is going well, and it's literally 3 different continents talking back to the US, but using the web agent as the way of connecting, and it's actually proven promising. So the web is not just for access from within America. I think it's going to be useful for multinational, some use, limited use. You wouldn't put 50 people in another country using the web agent, but if you've got an office with 3-4 people in a legal department for some multinational firm, it's looking very promising that is a viable option to use. Just one thing.
That's a good point. That's great to know. We'll once you're done with the proof of concept, we can let others know as well, and maybe get some more use like that. So, and then one final thing too is that we get questions. Do you have certain features? And there are times when yes, we do have those, and then we ask that whoever asks contact their reseller to get set up and turn it on if they cannot do it themselves. The other thing is, if we don't have a particular feature, let us know if you're looking for something, and we will give that to our development department, and we will add it at some point. The more inquiries we get about certain things, the better it is for getting it pushed through. So I don't know if I think a few of you have had experience with that, where features were requested and then we added them to the software.
As a matter of fact, yes, there was a feature we needed, which is relative hyperlinks to hyperlinking into Worldox documents from a document on the user workstation. And Worldox added that feature, and you'll find it under Edit, Copy Hyperlink, to be able to create durable, deep links into your Worldox document repository that can be used within the domain. So yes, I found development, if there's a demonstrated need for a feature, they get on it.
So anyways, I think we're more or less at the end. So if anybody has anything else they would like to add, now's your chance. I have added everybody's contact information. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to any of our panelists on this webinar. You can also call our support department if it's anything technical at support@worldox.com, or you could call our sales department. All of us will be very happy to help you. As mentioned, we are recording this session, and you will get a link to the recording once it's ready, and then we hope that everybody will join us again in the future for any of the other webinars we're doing, usually on Fridays at 2 p.m. And we thank everyone. Thanks for joining us, and have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving if we don't talk to you before next week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.